David here with figbootonpens. Today I have another flagship pen for you. It's a Pelikan, and the pen is the Souveran M1000. What I'm going to do is go over the parts and features of the M1000, talk about what I care for and what I don't care for, show some measurements, some size comparisons, and then provide a writing sample. Pelikan is a German company that was founded way back in 1838. For almost the first 100 years of the company, they focused mainly just on ink. Check out this old advertisement for Pelikan ink. Now, I don't think this ad would go over too well today. I don't necessarily look at this ad and want to buy ink. I look at this and want to grab some dishwashing soap to try to save this poor bird from the oil slick it just fell into. They began producing fountain pens in 1929, and the Pelikan M1000 was debuted in 1997. The Souveran name was given to Pelikan's higher-end pens, beginning with the M400, which was introduced in the early 1980s. And in German, a monarch or a supreme ruler is known as a sovereign or a Souveran. The pen arrived in this standard Pelikan box, and then inside we have a nice cardboard box with the Pelikan logo on top. I don't mean to make it sound cheap. It's not. It's like a firm, kind of thin cardboard as opposed to plastic or wood. The lid lifts off, and inside we have this little pouch, which we'll get to in just a bit. And the inside of the box has this kind of lined with this soft faux leather material, which is nice. And then inside we have a tray, and the tray has the same faux leather material. And underneath we have a couple of things. First of all, we have a use and care guide that's written in a dozen languages. And then we have a marketing piece entitled Moments of Joy, which has lots of really nice pictures of Pelikan pens in here. It's kind of hard to see, but it's really nice. Now, your packaging might vary. I believe that the Pelikan retailers purchase their own packaging from Pelikan, so what you actually receive might be a little bit different. You can see if you look at my review of my M800 or M805, actually, that one came in a huge round gift box. But the more important thing is contained in this pouch. It's made of the same faux leather, and I like the feel of this material. It's a unique feel that I find very soft and one that I've grown to associate with Pelikan pens. There is a little elastic band on here which has a plastic piece with the Pelikan logo on it that's meant to resemble a wax seal. You just slide this off, and inside we have a pen. This is the Pelikan Souveran M1000. There's a few special editions of the M1000 which come in a few different finishes, but the two main versions of this pen are the green stripe version and then the black version right here. Both have gold-plated trim and are really similar in all aspects other than the barrels. So, we'll look at the green stripe here just because it shows up a little bit better on camera than a black pen. Let's start by taking a look at the Finial. On the top here, we have the Pelikan logo. I find it interesting that the logo itself is not engraved. You can see here that the area is laser engraved and the logo is created in what's called the negative space, which is kind of a term to describe the technique of having the space around a subject form the actual subject itself. Now, let's talk about this logo just for a minute. You can see how the Pelikan logo has progressed over the years in the marketing pamphlet that comes with the pen. At the beginning of the company, the logo was very detailed, and over the years it kind of became less and less detailed. Then in 1937, again, they got rid of two of the babies. And then in 2003, we have the most current incarnation of the logo where they only have one baby. So I can imagine the conversations with the marketing team. No, the logo is great. We just need less babies. Why is this brand called Pelikan? Well, I found this interesting. It's because the gentleman who took over the company in 1863, named Gunther Wagner, registered the name Pelikan and the logo for the company because the Pelikan appeared on his family coat of arms. And in regard to family crests, the pelican was a symbol of Christian piety. Here's an example of a pelican family crest. According to medieval folklore, the mother pelican would actually feed her young with her own blood by plucking the feathers from her breast. So the mother is typically depicted feeding its young with some drops of blood on its chest. I guess Gunther decided to leave the blood part out of the company logo. So, okay, enough about history stuff. The finial itself is one of my favorite parts, or favorite finials on any pen I own. I just really like this kind of tiered chisel style. The finial transitions into the clip band and the clip, which I really like as well. It's the traditional pelican clip, which resembles the beak of a pelican. The cap angles up ever so slightly, less than a millimeter. And then we have this double cap band. They are gold-plated rings, as is all the hardware with this pen. And there is a smaller band and then a larger one, which is stamped, not engraved, with Pelikan, Souverain, and then Germany. The barrel angles up ever so slightly, just a little more than half a millimeter, then tapers down toward the end of the barrel again, just a tiny bit, less than half a millimeter, but it's just very slight to it. Then we have a very small step down to the piston knob, which has double rings, and then the end of the knob is rounded off. The cap twists off to reveal one of my favorite things about this pen, which is this enormous two-tone 18 karat gold nib. Just look at this beast. It's glorious. I really like two-tone nibs, and this one is one of my favorite. I just think it's beautiful. I like the scroll work, and then you have the Pelikan logo. It's a bit tucked in at the bottom, but you can see the F indicated that this is a fine nib. This nib is very similar in size to that of the Mont Blanc 149. Here they are side by side. You can see that they are virtually the same length, but the shoulders on the Pelikan isn't quite as wide as on the Mont Blanc, giving the nib kind of a narrower appearance. And then here's a look at the very large plastic feed. I'll discuss it more during the writing sample, but this nib is very special. The way that Pelikan sizes their M1000 nibs are a bit different as well. They consider this to be a fine, but you'll see that in comparison to other pens, this is more like a juicy medium or even a broad. When I bought this pen, I was really afraid that the fine line would be too scratchy, but I did my research and determined that this was probably going to be best for me, and that was correct. That it's by no means scratchy. It's just amazing. The section actually begins with a little gold ring here and is flared out at the end, and then angles up just slightly to the cap threads, which I don't find to be sharp at all. The M1000 is a very large pen. It's the largest in the Pelikan line, and it's very similar in length and girth to the Mont Blanc 149, which I would consider to be a direct competitor to the M1000. When I first received this pen, I thought it was huge, but I've really grown to enjoy larger pens, so I find this section and the weight to be very comfortable. The cap does post, and it does post securely, but I wouldn't describe it as really throwing off the balance of the pen. There's enough weight in the barrel that it really doesn't feel too much out of whack. The barrel is plenty long enough to use unposted, which is how I use it the majority of the time. The pen is a piston filler and has a fairly large ink capacity, and the brass piston mechanism inside really adds to the heft of the pen, but doesn't throw it out of balance at all. Okay, let's get to these stripes. I really like these stripes. There's some translucency between the stripes, which acts as an ink window. But to be honest, I've always found it kind of hard to see the ink through these stripes. I really have to hold the pen up to the light in order to see the ink level. There are no stripes on the black version. But there is an ink window at the front of the barrel. Again, I find it very tough to see and through this window. And again, you have to kind of really look up in the light in order to see what's going on in there. You can see here in some close-up pictures, but the stripes have a bit of shimmer to them. I like that the lines between the stripes vary a bit. You know, I'm kind of guessing that when they make this pen, they apply the entire inside of the barrel with the green paint, and then while it's wet, maybe use a hard bristled brush or something like that to scrape away the lines in order to create this effect. Don't know for certain, that's just my guess. My biggest complaint about the M1000 is that Pelikan does not offer it in a blue stripe. If they made this in the blue stripe, I would buy one of those in a second. I just really, really love the blue stripes and the look of the blue stripes on this pen, or on the Pelikan's other pens. I'm not sure what the logic is in regard to why the M1000 isn't available in blue, but I wish it was. This is a pen which has steadily been climbing up my list of favorite pens. I had always rated the M800 higher than the M1000, but I would not be surprised if that changes by the end of this year. I just really like this pen. The price of the M1000 can vary greatly. The list price for this pen is $935, which means that most retailers will have it available for around 20% less, which is right around $750. But with some searching and some patience, there are bargains out there to be had in this pen. If you're looking to pick up an M1000, I would definitely shop around. Now, while I love the M1000, I'm not sure if I need two of them. I have the black and the green. That I'm actually working on putting together a website where I'll have some written reviews, some additional pictures, and some other content. And I'll also have a store where I'll be selling off some of my pens in my collection I've reviewed and don't use that much. So look for that coming in the near future. I've been toying with the idea of a site for a while, and me saying this is a verbal commitment to myself to get the site up and running sooner rather than later. So, there is the Pelikan M1000. It is one of my favorite pens and definitely one of my favorite nibs. So now it's time for some measurements, some size comparisons, and then a writing sample. Here we go with some size comparisons for the Pelikan M1000. First of all, in regard to some other Pelikan pens, here it is with a Pelikan M805. Then here it is with a Pelikan M600. And then here it is with a Pelikan M205. So they get progressively smaller. Then in regard to some other flagship pens, here it is with a Montblanc 149. Then here it is with a Platinum President. And then here it is with a Pilot Custom 845. So here we go with the rest of the writing sample. I'm actually going to use the black version for the writing sample just because I have an ink in it that I haven't shown before. But there's another look at that beautiful nib. So what we have here is the Pelikan M1000. And this is a fine nib. And the ink is, I'm going to butcher this name, but this is Roaring Klingner. And it's Smartgrün. Which in German translates to emerald green. So it's actually a very nice ink. I like the bottles that they come in. I kind of like these more narrow and taller bottles. It makes it easier to get a pen with an enormous nib in there and get ink. This is what the ink actually looks like. And it is an emerald green. It's kind of fairly similar to something like the Monteverde green. But you can see it doesn't have as much pop to it as something like the Diamine Apple Glory, which is currently high on my list of favorite greens. But the Roaring Klingner still is a very nice green and behaves very nicely. So here we go with the rest of the writing sample. Am I going to lose space here? I got to plane that out a little bit better. Okay, I said this is a fine nib, but for a fine nib, you can get a tremendous amount of line variation out of this nib. Just as comparison, this is the M805, and for the M805, we're using very little pressure here, and this is a medium. And then for the M1000, for a fine, again, using very little pressure, there's not much difference. But where you can really see some difference is in the flex, because for the M800, starting off with very little and pushing a little bit more, you can get a little line variation out of there. But with the M8 or M1000, you push it and you can get a lot. It's a very flexy nib, and it has a lot of spring to it, but I really, really like it. In regard to wetness, it is a very, very wet nib. Very juicy. And in regard to reverse writing, it's a little on the scratchy side, but it works. In regard to some fast writing, then it has no problems keeping up. You know, the M1000 nib has a bit more feedback compared to the buttery smooth M800 or 805, but it's really, really nice feedback. I really enjoyed this nib, and it's just one of those nibs that's fun to use. So there we have the Pelikan M1000. That it's a very special pen that performs very well, and one, like I mentioned before, that's rising up my list of favorite pens. Thanks for watching, and I'll talk to you later.